So freestyle fighting the Tai Chi way, my biggest influence lineage-wise for the training method I have, where I got it, was I got it from my teacher, Tyrone Jackson. He was Dr. Wu's senior student. Dr. Wu was an indoor disciple under Li Ying. Li Ying is the guy that did the Iron Palm in 100 days. A couple books, different books on Tai Chi. Was known for being a good Bagua practitioner, for being a Xingyi practitioner. For the Tai Chi side of it, for many, many years, my understanding was directly under Yang family, mostly Yang Sin Fu. I have gathered in more recent years that there was either a lot of influence or that he was also a student under probably Deng Huling or Deng Fuling, depending on who's pronouncing it and how they're saying it and all that stuff. But Deng family, which were the best, considered to be the best fighters in Yang family by most people who had interaction with them. I've seen a number of different fighting versions for Tai Chi. This one is specific in how it goes about things. Most of what's seen out there publicly has been contrived. They just did their best job of trying to figure out what these people were actually doing, as opposed to, hey, this is really the fighting method and the other training is designed to lend itself to the fighting method. Now, I want to talk about a different one than the one that I know for a moment, and that is the one where, and this is Wu stylists do this quite a bit. There are some Yang stylists who do it some, and that is that the attacker comes and they let the attacker come, and then they just have superior position, keep superior position, and use the other person's inferior position and whatever mistakes they're making against them. And it's a very skilled method, very refined method, very high level method. The trick is that for somebody to really be able to fight with that and use it well, there's no, even intermediate students probably normally cannot do it well enough for it to really work well in a real situation under stress. That it takes somebody that's really been doing it a long time and working at it a long time and really been doing it for a long time, 20 plus years, before that's going to be something that they can really produce well. The method that I got through the lineage that I've got that I talk about there is one that I have not seen very many people do. Now, I have read things that indicate that it's more well known than just this lineage, but I've not seen it hardly anywhere. And I'm not sure if it's that it sort of was kept secret, or that it died out, or exactly, and it didn't die out because I have it, so. But exactly what, I'm not sure what the history is and what happened there. And I'm always talking to people if they've got history and knowledge like that and asking those questions. Tyrone probably didn't know, just to be honest, just because he probably didn't care. He liked studying the arts, he loved the arts, he had like 100 different forms. He had all 4 long forms of Tai Chi, all 4 main styles. He knew the long form and knew them correctly. There was more than one occasion where I asked him history and it was sort of like, yeah, you could tell he knew that he had a good line, but past that, he didn't care. Had I been able to talk to Dr. Wu about it, I'm sure he could have probably said this and this and this and told me directly where it was. But by the time I got interested in that stuff, it was too late. They had already passed and that kind of thing. So anyways, I didn't even take hardly any pictures with them. The pictures of me and my teachers in the 80s was like 2, because it didn't even occur to me to do that, you know, as a student. Now, when I hit China the first time in the early 90s, I was like, I better take a bunch of pictures of this so that people know I'm telling the truth about what's going on here. But I'd already been in the arts for over 15 years at that point. So the biggest thing is that this is using light skill, very soft and very aware, very agile, and like I say, very soft kind of work. I'm going to demonstrate that for you a little bit, and we are kind of full from lunch, so work with that in mind. But if he's throwing the punch at me, it's not that I'm trying to intercept it with something. Not that I'm even looking at, hey, I'm going to use a posture so much and come into it, even though we talked about that kind of a method. It really is more about, I want him to fall into a hole, and then I will use that hole to come from where you are. And then I'll use that hole against him. Go ahead and come around with that. And so it would lend itself at the higher level to being that one where they come in and you're right there and it's perfect, like what a master level would be for what we talked about with like Wu method typically. But the initial of it is really, how do you not get impacted? He's coming again, and how do you not get impacted? And when I first encountered the method, I was doing the Tai Chi for some of the health stuff, even though I was still really young, because my genetics are horrible. No grandparents, but one made it past the age of 60. And one of the senior students of my teacher, who was a Kung Fu teacher and the Tai Chi teacher, and I didn't know what style they were studying. I figured they were doing Bagua or one of the other Kung Fu styles or whatever. I'm sparring them. I'm using Tiger. And I step out, and I feel this tap, 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 and he's standing behind me. And I was like, okay, can you do that again? Because I'm thinking, okay, it was a fluke. He said, sure. Boom. He's standing behind me again. And I'm like, okay, I got to know what style that is. And I thought he was going to say something like, there was a style that my teacher taught that I didn't learn called like Yellow Reaper and all kinds of weird, exotic Kung Fu styles, right? So I was like, so I expected to hear something like that. And he says, oh, that's Tai Chi. Yeah, right, okay. You know, if it had been later, I'd have been like, get out of here. But it was early 80s still, and I was like, no, what style is that? And he said, man, that's Tai Chi. All I study is Tai Chi. Ask Tyrone, I'm one of the senior students for Tai Chi. That's Tai Chi. And I kind of pondered that for a minute and went, all right, so you hit me 3 times, you're standing behind me. I'm coming with a little bit of this, and I had you in my sights, and I don't know how you did it. I gotta have that. Okay, so I went to Tyrone, and I was in the middle of a Black Tiger Kung Fu form, and went, with all due respect, I gotta learn that. And I know you teach the Tai Chi right up front, and I started Tai Chi like, and that much more in earnest, and started getting the martial side of it, and sparred every time we went to class. Kung Fu people sparred, and obviously the Tai Chi people and everybody else. And for 6 months, I sparred trying to duplicate some of what I was learning in the Tai Chi, and he wasn't really teaching me the fighting method yet. I just had experienced it and got creamed every time I went to class. Just hit and not giving anything back, and that's how it went for 6 solid months. And finally one day somebody threw something, and I moved out of the way and landed something. I did it once. Took another 6 months before I could do it with any regularity at all, and that doesn't mean all the time. And fortunately, it was young enough and early enough in my training that I basically focused in on that. Because if I were to learn the same thing today, it would take a lot longer to do it, because I'm teaching a whole lot more, and wasn't teaching at all at that point, and learning a whole lot more, and have a whole lot more things that I'm working on, and that I have to keep up to a certain caliber of ability and all that stuff. But at that time, I really pretty much focused on that for that time. Did not consider anything other than that's the fighting method for the Tai Chi. Really cool. Not realizing until later that most people don't have that, haven't even seen that, and that even when they do get exposed to it, most people don't develop the ability with it. That didn't occur to me until probably somewhere around the mid-90s, as I was reading and studying and researching and continuing, and began to realize what was out there and what wasn't out there, and all that stuff. So I'm going to give you some things to help you to start to build up to this. And most of the way that I got it was they did it and said, do it. So I could show you the whole thing, and we could spend the next 3 hours with you guys all getting bashed by whoever's doing the attacking. But I've developed over the years ways to try to give you a smarter, simpler path to help you to get to at least some of what's going on there. So the first thing we'll work on is